Good evening, folks. This is a meeting of the Economic Development Committee. It's about 8 after 7, so we're going to call the meeting to order. And without any further ado, jump right into our first item of business, which is our downtown survey results on the business village. And Julie, take it away.
Thank you everyone for being here. I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on kind of the genesis of the downtown survey. When I first started on the Economic Development Committee at its inception about 4 years ago, whenever I've spoken with people around town, whenever my membership on the EDC comes up, people always say, well, what are you going to do about downtown? And we've tackled a lot of different issues since we started, and we focus a lot on vacancy rates and welcoming business to town. We've put out business guides, permitting guides. We've done a lot of, we posted a lot of events, but we haven't really tried to tackle that issue yet. And it's always kind of been the elephant in the room because it's something that seemed kind of daunting and insurmountable, but it's something that everybody seems to talk about. But now that we're on the cusp of having the Main Street development work done, the streetscape work done, we thought this was a good time to revisit it. And because of that work, we've learned about some other programs that might be able to help us to do some revitalization of downtown along with the streetscape in a way that is, small scale, that works with the culture and the climate of Southborough. And we've gotten some good ideas, but we figured that the best place to start was with the residents, because we're all residents on the committee. This is all about the residents. We're not going to do anything that the residents don't support. So we thought the best way to start doing that was to put together a survey and kind of figure out what people are interested in, because as many people who have said to me, what are you going to do about downtown? I'm sure everybody has a different vision for what that actually means. So when we started talking about potentially trying to tackle this, we said that the biggest, the most important issue for us was to make everything very transparent. We wanted community involvement, and we wanted to make sure that this was done in a way that was very transparent and open to the public. So this is the first of what we hope will be many public meetings with residents to see what can be done in downtown. So we developed the survey, we rolled it out in August. We had it open, I think, for about 6 weeks through September. We thought August wasn't the greatest time to reach people. And we were actually really pleased with the results. We had 427 responses, which we thought for a town like Southborough was a really, remarkable sample size. We tried to reach as many people as we could. We used social media, Twitter. We used our own website. We worked a lot with Beth at my Southborough to make sure that it was actually posted there a couple of times. We also made sure we wanted this to be a collaborative effort. So before we even actually publicized the survey, we reached out and we shared drafts of the survey with other boards and committees, let them have an opportunity to comment and be involved with the process. We wanted to make sure that the businesses who would be affected had a say. So we went door to door down Main Street and passed out flyers, letting people know about the survey. We publicized it at our broker breakfast. We really tried to make many efforts over the course of about a month and a half to make sure that everybody who wanted to could have their voice heard on this.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
One of the other things that another reason why we felt that the survey was an important first step for us, there's a lot of good content about the villages generally and about downtown specifically in the master plan, but we were a little hesitant to rely on the master plan too much, not because of any particular flaw or whatnot that we felt was in the master plan, but really just because it's kind of dated at this point. It's back to 2008 and 2009. So we wanted to make sure that, like Julie said, we had broad community input, which I think the master plan certainly had, but we wanted to make sure that it was up to date as well. So that was important. One other thing that that I was going to mention at the beginning is, especially with a group such as we have here tonight, feel free to interrupt us along the way. This is certainly a conversational group, so don't hesitate to ask questions as we go through this.
No, yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yes, anytime. So just to kind of show you who responded to the survey, it was over 98% of the respondents were residents, with a small mix of people who, most of them overlapped with the I work in Southborough or I own a business in Southborough category, but it was over 98% residents, so this is really the voice of Southborough. We just check, you know, we ask people ages, we have a diverse age range. And then, so I think the second one is better. So just so everybody knows what we're talking about, what we're considering the downtown business village district to be. It's kind of the spot, and this map is slightly confusing, but if you look over toward the right of the screen, it goes from the Main Street Bank, which is the old Southborough Savings Bank, through the little plaza where the Santander Bank is. It's kind of that stretch of town. So first we thought it was important to kind of figure out what people, how people felt about the downtown area now and the amenities and the businesses that were available currently. So we had some of our questions that were kind of tailored toward that. And this question, how strong is the sense of community in the downtown area? We thought this was a really interesting and positive slide because 88%, or the vast majority, agreed that there's a really strong sense of community, or at least a little strong. And it's really only 12% of people who didn't think there was a strong sense of community. And this really makes sense if you look at that area, because this is, you know, to the extent we have community events, and this is where people do congregate. So I think that makes sense. The next question we asked was how satisfied people are with the business climate downtown. And that we got less of a positive response. Overall, if we kind of clump them and divide into satisfied versus not satisfied, 70% of people who responded to the survey said that they were dissatisfied with the business climate downtown. 30% said they were satisfied. So it's a fairly significant majority. And then we went into a little more detail and asked people, what do you like about downtown? And the kind of winning response here, about half of the respondents said that what they liked most about the downtown was the historic building and the historic feel of the downtown. Some people responded that they liked local shopping opportunities, public and green space, but those were smaller percentages, about 25% or so. What I thought was a little more interesting was what people said they did not like about the downtown business village district. And I thought one of the really telling statistics that came out of this was that 86% of the respondents said that they were displeased with the limited amount of shopping and dining opportunities downtown. So I thought that was really interesting. About 62% said that they were displeased with the aesthetics of downtown. 48% said there was limited walkability. 46% said that there was limited public and green space. So those are, I thought, were really interesting statistics that came out of here. We asked what the advantages to doing business in the downtown district are, and the overwhelming response was that the greatest advantage was that downtown is close to where people reside, and that makes sense. People want convenience. They want to the extent possible, support their local businesses, feel like they're part of their community. This is the area maybe they drive through anyway. So that was a driver for what was a compelling reason to do business downtown.
Julie, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On number 9, back one.
Yeah.
On that question, was the question, I mean, again, I guess I don't know the actual question, was it asking for more than one response, or did they have the opportunity?
A menu of options.
Okay, and they could choose how many they...
Correct.
Okay.
Right, exactly. And just so everyone knows, we're making the raw data available. We kind of culled it and put it in presentable form. We didn't think people would want to sit through 45 slides of raw data. So But we are making that available, so people will be able to see how those responses played
Okay.
out.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It was set up for check all that apply. What don't you
Okay.
like about our downtown
Yeah,
okay.
business village district?
Perfect, thank you.
Good question. We also asked what some impediments to doing business downtown were, and and this was another one I believe that was was this a ranking one or I think this was one that you could check multiple ones as well. And 56% of respondents, a pretty overwhelming majority of respondents said that the downtown area lacks a cohesive downtown feel. And so as you kind of look at all these things, I feel like it begins to tell a little bit of a story that people are interested in downtown, they're interested in the sense of community, and maybe they would like to see a little bit more of a way to encapsulate that downtown community feel. Just to also understand kind of the state of where things are with downtown right now, we asked people how often they utilize the downtown business village, and we found that it was actually fairly underutilized. 77% of respondents use it 2 times a month or less. Actually, I'm sorry, 85% use it 2 times a month or less, and only 15% use it 1 to 2 times a week or more. So there's definitely potential to better utilize, kind of the central area of our town. We asked people what services they utilize downtown. 65% responded that they use the restaurants, which makes sense. It's one of the kind of few amenities down there. 40% said banking, and a smattering of others said personal care, business or professional, real estate and insurance services. We were also interested in how people got to downtown. Vast majority of people drive, which is not too surprising. About 22% of the respondents said that they would walk downtown, and about 10% said that they would bike. So that was interesting, and that's something that we want to maybe foster and capitalize on, explore more, and you'll see with some of the other statistics that lines up with some other efforts aside from business development that we're interested in. So once we went through and tried to get an understanding of the state of the business development district currently, we wanted to take the next step and ask people what kinds of things they would be interested in having in the downtown business village. And 90% of the respondents said that they would be interested in having restaurants and or coffee shops. Again, this was I was surprised at how many people really were interested in that. I knew that there was some interest, but I thought that was a really overwhelming number.
Do you interpret that they want more coffee shops and restaurants because what's there now isn't what they want to go to, so they're actually they're not necessarily looking for more, but maybe different ones? Because I'm thinking of the reality of how much market each one of those could share, and could we really handle 1 or 2 more without closing others out?
Yeah, I'm going to come at that in kind of a roundabout
Okay.
way. One of the things that I found interesting about the survey kind of overall is the degree to which it confirmed kind of my anecdotal experience of what people say about downtown. And so, I have sort of gotten the sense that what people want is options. And one of the experiences that we've had with the Marlborough Economic Development Corporation in talking to the restaurant owners is that they don't view that as sort of competition in the way that you might expect, because they want kind of a certain mass, and,
Yes.
so I think people want options, and the restaurant owners themselves seem to want a collection of restaurants so that there's kind of this vibe or this vitality to the area. And if you walk to one restaurant and the wait is 45 minutes on a Saturday night, you're like, oh, well, let's walk across the street. And so I've not seen anything in this kind of keys off of what I think Julie's going to cover in the next, in fact, I know what Julie's going to cover in the next slide, which is some of the comments that we got in the sort of not handwritten, but you could enter additional feedback, and I think that's kind of consistent with the additional feedback that we want. So I don't get the impression that people are saying trade this restaurant for another one. They're saying give us a couple of more options.
Yeah, that's completely correct. We didn't see any negative. There was no get rid of this restaurant or that restaurant. It was that people wanted more. And I think that also ties into the really strong response we got about wanting to create a more community feel or community center point, where it is more of a destination where you'd want to go, not just to stop by and pick up a pizza on your way home, but to take your family or to go meet somebody for a cup of coffee. I think that all kind of ties together and starts to tell a story of what people are looking for.
Yeah, I'll sort of build on that too, and you'll see this in some of the other survey responses that it's not just, this was probably the most uniform of the responses that we got, but clearly folks want a combination of amenities. They don't, they want the restaurants and they want kind of the, retail options, but I think we're talking about like boutique type retail options. But they also want all the things that kind of go along with that village feel. So, some public spaces or open spaces in the downtown, and also connectivity to trails and bike trails and things like that. And that's kind of like the big picture that I take out of this, which is, people want that sort of sense of a downtown community, and they just want that kind of critical gravity and that critical mass so that it kind of sustains itself more, and it's more of a reason to go downtown even if you're not going for a particular or a specific restaurant or a specific purpose.
Yeah. So we received, most of the questions had, or many of the questions at least, had some option for comments, and this was not surprisingly the most commented on. I think we had about 48 comments on in response to this question, and it's called a word cloud for those who don't know. And this kind of highlights some of the words that we saw repetitiously in the comments, and the comments are going to be available along with the raw data so that you can read them for yourselves. But this kind of points to some of the themes that we saw come up again and again. Restaurants, lots of mentions of bakery, shopping, places, business, town center, food, sense of community. These are the things that people were talking about. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive of this type of small scale improvement that works with our community and our culture and everything that we already love about Southborough. We also asked, and this one surprised me a little bit, we questioned the appetite for any kind of mixed use buildings. This is something that's very, very popular right now, is having like a ground level coffee shop or store with a second story, and we limit it to a 2-story as in our hypothetical, a second story apartment or condo unit. 52% of respondents said that they would support this. Only 15% said they would not support it, and then in the middle were the rest of the respondents said either maybe or they would need more information. They were looking for more detail, which obviously we couldn't provide at this point. But the vast majority of the people were at least amenable to considering it or discussing that as an option. And this was another question that came with a lot of comments to it. A lot of the comments we saw consistently were that not all, but the majority of respondents preferred condos to apartment units, probably ownership versus rental. Although some people did say more diversity in income housing was necessary and they'd be in favor of that. There were a couple of comments that voiced concerns about traffic, parking increase. These are all things obviously we would need to continue to discuss if this was something that we wanted to move forward with. So we talked a lot, you know, the first questions when we started talking about what the future, what would you like to see, kind of dealt with business opportunities, different amenities that people would be interested in. But we wanted to also cover things like less development, traditional development type things that would be improvements to downtown. So we asked people if they would be interested in bike and walking path connectivity, and if they would be interested in space for a farmer's market. I know the Faith School has been putting on farmer's markets around the corner, and I've had the opportunity to go to a few of them, and they're wonderful. And I think that there's a strong appetite in town for those type of things that bring the community together in a positive way. Pocket parks or picnic areas. We have the Max Wraps, and you know, there's not really a place where you can go sit and eat, or even if you wanted to go to Moro's and bring your lunch outside, they have a little seating, but if there was a pocket park or a bench where you could sit. We also talked about bike racks, because in one of our previous slides, we asked people how they got to town, and 10% of respondents said that they would occasionally bike to town. So if we had a place where they could secure their bike, maybe that would encourage people to visit downtown more, especially if we combine that with more trails and connectivity. And overwhelming responses were very positive on this. Bikes and walking paths seem to be the most favorable, but generally people were in favor of all of these types of things.
My sort of takeaway on that is that you know, you don't see a huge variation in the respondents, so I sort of take away that people want all this stuff. You know, they want that sort of downtown feel. They want the opportunity for bike paths and walking paths. They want the opportunity for a farmer's market. They want a picnic park. They want bike racks. You know, they just want all those kind of amenities that you might think of in kind of the, you know, the quaint village type setting.
Yeah, I think that's right. And this next slide reinforces some of that as well. We expanded it to some more beautification efforts that we were considering, and asked people how they would feel about those. These are things like parks and open space, historical streetlights. We talked again about biking and walking trails. We raised undergrounding the utilities. We talked about historic signage, flags, and dedicated benches, and again, there were overwhelmingly positive responses to the 77. There wasn't, you can tell there's not a great deal of deviation between, and these are weighted, that's why the numbers are weird, but there's not a great deal of deviation between the individual ideas that we threw out there. But I think the takeaway from this is only 23% of the respondents said that they didn't want any of these. So again, 77% of the community is saying they want something, and whatever it is, if it's you know, open space or public parks or, you know, historic streetlights, that's where we have room to discuss. But people were generally in favor of all of these things by a significant degree. So some of kind of a summary and takeaway of our survey, I think, is that residents and businesses care very deeply about their downtown, about their community. We know that about Southborough. People are very invested here and want to have a strong community. And we do have a strong sense of community. And this, I think the results of the survey suggest that people like the idea of having a place where they can congregate, a downtown center that they can be proud of, and they're interested in discussing at least improvements. I think some of the more important statistics that came out of this were that 90% of people were interested in more restaurants. Things like public houses or pubs were mentioned repeatedly. 67% of respondents were interested in retail shopping. And most residents were also open to some small-scale mixed use. So I thought those were really important takeaways from this. People are very concerned about the aesthetics of downtown. They would like to see improvements. We know we have a beautiful downtown, but it probably could use a little bit of a facelift. And our residents are really interested in kind of fostering that downtown feel, that community center feel.
Can I jump in? One of the things that I sort of take away, and this is kind of marrying the survey results with kind of my own anecdotal experience, is that there's this kind of theme of people want some of the stuff in downtown Southborough that they go to other towns for, you know, whether it's some of the shopping opportunities in kind of like a downtown Westborough, or some of the dining and drinking opportunities, I don't mean like drinking, you know, right? In Hudson, right? The rail trail, a flatbread pizza
That's
place, or the
drinking.
Medusa, or things like that. It is drinking. I was trying to find a more artful way of saying it, but I guess it is what it is. And so that's, I think that kind of comes through in the survey responses, not only in the sort of aggregate data, but also the additional comments that folks had.
Yeah, I agree. And bakeries, bake shops, coffee shops were phrases that came up very frequently, as well as public spaces and connectivity. And that all makes sense with what we all know, what we all suspected about Southborough is that we care very much about our public space, we care about our trails, and if we could combine the benefits of our beautiful landscape and area and connect it somehow to a downtown that people are excited about going to, I think that there's a lot of great opportunity there. I just want to mention, obviously, we understand that there are some barriers to getting all of these done. We're obviously well aware of our limitations in size and in scope and in septic and in zoning, but we for the purposes of this survey, for this exercise, we're hoping to put those aside and think about exactly what, without those barriers, what would we love to see, and we think that there are ways that we can overcome some of them depending on what we decide, how we decide we want to move forward.
Yeah, and that was deliberate by design. We wanted folks to really kind of give some feedback of, setting all other things aside, what is it that you'd like to see? Because we didn't want people to sort of go into the survey with preconceived notions of, oh, you'll never be able to do this, or oh, that's not possible because of, the street or the level of traffic or the parking or, whatever the circumstance was. We just wanted to kind of get a sense of what is it that people want. And then that kind of leads to, to kind of step 2, which is, what kind of comes out of that. And I don't know, am I jumping ahead of you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So, in terms of next steps on this, now we've got this survey. We're going to post the survey results, and my copy does not have the web. Does yours have the web reference?
Yeah,
Oh, yours does?
Yep.
Okay, I just have a different copy of it. So you've got the website, so you have access to all of the survey responses and as much data as the Economic Development Committee does. So you know everything that we know in terms of what the responses are to the survey. So now that we kind of have this, we have this collection of data points, we're going to be doing a couple of things that follow up. One of which is we have started kind of a mailing list of folks who are interested in, that was the last question in the survey in the very last slide, which is, do you want to be involved in this process, and do you want to make sure that you stay on top of it so that, when we post a meeting, you don't necessarily have to make sure that you have checked the town website, a week or 48 hours or whatever it is that the meeting might get posted. So we'll let you know when we're going to have any sort of follow-up meetings specifically related to the downtown.
It's kind of disappointing at 310, and that's a tally before the 437. I mean, it's reflective of the reality, but...
I actually think that's pretty darn good. I don't know, I mean, I don't sign up for many mailing lists. I was hesitant to put my own email address on there. So the fact that, 67 people would want to be on the mailing list and participate in the process, I actually took that as a good sign.
Okay. Do you know if they were notified about tonight?
I believe
Is
so,
that-
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, out of 67 that said yes, I don't know if any of you were on the mailing list, but I wouldn't count on that 67.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
no, I'm sure
yeah,
that's true. I think our point is we're making very concerted efforts. We think this is, we
The reach out is there.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe naively, but we assumed this would be a topic that a lot of people would be interested in. And I know evenings are tough. Monday nights in particular, it's a school night for everybody, are hard. But our goal, we're following your model, Claire, on the Main Street project, and we want to be as transparent as possible. We want as much involvement and feedback as we can. So this is hopefully the first of several meetings that we're gonna have as this process goes forward. So, and, you know, we'll redouble down on our efforts to make sure anybody who wants to participate knows when things are happening.
And I think that's kind of the nature of the beast, right? I mean, we've all done enough of these things that it's, you know, people don't show up until, you know, shovels are in the ground and then, oh my gosh, what is it that you're doing
You're not
there?
gonna
Why
plant
didn't
it
anybody?
there, are you?
Right? So, you know, you could certainly look at this as a half glass or half full. I'm going to put on the smiley face, and I'm going to look at that as at least 18% full, rounding up. So we're going to do a couple of follow-up sessions from this, at least, you know, specifically that are kind of in the works. One of which is a brainstorming session. And the purpose of that brainstorming session, what's going to be kind of following from this is our ULI TAP program. So ULI is the Urban Land Institute, if you're not familiar with them. And they help communities do revitalization projects. And they work with towns and communities and cities of all shapes and sizes in helping them on specific goals that they might have. And they work with the community to help you design the program that they put into place. And so they have a program called their Technical Assistance Program. And what you essentially do is you work with ULI to develop the kind of research questions that you want them to assist you with. So it can be something as narrow as, you know, we have a particular building and we want your assistance in how we can successfully reuse that building. And you can think of, you know, plenty of examples of that. Or it can be something much broader. It can be as broad as your whole downtown area and what do we do to revitalize it. Or you can, you know, kind of pick and choose and mix and match a little bit as to what you want your program to look like. And what ULI does is then they come in and they have a very public process where they meet with and they do interviews with stakeholders of different types and different groups, the business community, residents, different organizations within the town, and they try and get a sense as to what's important and not so important to some of the different groups. And then they bring in a panel of experts, sometimes as many as a dozen experts in all different kinds of fields: planning, engineering, land use, can be environmental, all different types of experts to help you kind of come up with a plan for how you implement the goals that your community has for the building or the downtown area or whatever the scope of your project is. And so we're going through the TAP process. We're just at the very beginning stages of the program design. So we'll be doing some brainstorming sessions to give folks an opportunity to kind of digest the data a little bit, and then to give us some input on what that program design, what that TAP program design should really look like. What do you think the things are that we should focus on? We're also going to be following up with a business-specific meeting. All the residents will be invited as well, but we want to kind of get some additional feedback from particularly the Main Street businesses and the businesses that are doing, you know, business in our villages, with a keen eye toward the Main Street construction piece of it, and making sure that they feel like they have kind of a conduit and to the extent that we can assist them, and I know Karen Galligan from DPW is going to be doing similar things, and we've already been talking with Karen, but we want to make sure that we're working with them, and that to the extent that the EDC can do anything to support, because this is going to be a major disruption for them, to the extent that we can do anything to kind of support their businesses in the course of that project, we want to make sure that we do what we can to help them out. So we're going to be having a meeting with the business community related to that. And then, you know, the last piece, which I kind of referred to already, is all of this is really designed towards developing and designing the best ULI TAP program that we can, so that when we have the benefit of all these folks and all these experts coming into our town to help us out with this issue, that we've really thought through the questions and the issues that we really want to get their input on. And that's it. Questions?
So as part of this, have you been able to determine what's keeping some of this stuff from happening now?
We have not in any sort of scientific or researched way, no. I think there's some anecdotal evidence about, about some of those things, but I'm hesitant to sort of rely on that, having not really done anything specific to solicit that kind of feedback.
As a longtime resident of the area, I think before we try to build a grand scheme, we have to look at the septic issues that hold back downtown.
Yeah, and
So hopefully that's part of what you're...
absolutely, and obviously, I don't know if you were here when we talked about this portion of it, but we said, for this exercise, we're asking people to put aside those obvious problems like zoning issues and septic issues, and those are actually things that the ULI group has helped other communities deal with. So if we say our goal is to put is to take this plot of land and put in a restaurant and a coffee shop, and then we could work with ULI and they could help us find ways to solve the problem for septic. So that's the kind of things that they've done in communities similar to Southborough. So that's why we thought it was important to engage them. They're third party, they're objective. They come in and they do an evaluation with engineers and with a whole slew of the whole team, and they interview all the players in town. They spend a great deal of time here. They do a lot of research, and then they come up with different proposals. And of course, anything that we consider will go through town meeting. So that's why we want to make sure people are interested and engaged in thinking about this well before then.
And have you been able to look at any of the research from past zoning advisory committee findings for the downtown area?
We have reviewed that. We haven't, we're not, we wanted to make sure that we did the survey first.
I think it's great.
To kind of get some broad feedback before we spent a lot of time developing recommendations on specific zoning updates or technical issues like septic and so forth. And I think part of what one thing sort of almost as important as what we took out of the survey in terms of what people want is, I think, the fairly clear evidence, which hopefully makes some of these technical problems easier to tackle, is what people don't want. And I think it's pretty uniform that people don't want large-scale shopping centers. I don't think there's any interest in big box stores. There's
That's good because we
Yeah.
didn't get them.
there just it doesn't seem to be any appetite for that, and I'd count myself among that group. So I think I'm hoping that what's going to come out of this at the end of the day with ULI's assistance is a series of recommendations that are doable for the kind of scale of the improvements that people seem to want.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think I think that if we have something to present at town meeting that's not just here's a zoning bylaw, but here's what you said you wanted, and I think the survey confirmed a lot of what we've been hearing anecdotally, but now we have the data, I think, to back it up. But if we go to town meeting saying, here's what you said you wanted, here are the 3 steps we have to take to get there, including passing the zoning bylaw, if that's where we end up, if that's where we fall, then I think that's something more tangible that people would be more interested in voting for versus, wordsmithing and mincing the specifics of a particular zoning bylaw. I think if it was toward a specific goal that people felt connected with, then we might have better luck, or we might not. We'll see.
I think everyone would love to see some more improvements downtown, similar to what's been happening with one property, but there was also, Sam and I were on the zoning advisory committee, I'm not sure if anyone else was, Kathy.
Kathy was there.
And there was some extreme pushback from the neighborhood toward mixed use and any further expansion of it, which was a little disappointing.
Yeah,
So I hope we can get somewhere
And
with
we were hoping to see more residents. We're certainly going to, residents close to the downtown area. We have Claire here, but we're certainly going to be, and David, yep, and we're certainly going to be making a concerted effort to reach out to them as well, because obviously they're stakeholders for sure. So we want to hear their voices. So.
And that's probably a good example of the kind of stakeholder groups that ULI facilitates. You know, they'll do kind of a, I mean, I won't speak for them in their study design, but the sense that I get is that they do a group like local residents, larger community residents who, you know, have an interest in the downtown, the businesses that are there, and so forth.
So great work so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sam?
A comment, I think this is pretty interesting, and I mean, it seems to me there may be a couple of tracks here. One is in terms of what you're talking about, getting some of the bigger issues defined and organized toward doing some things over a longer period of time. But I also think that there's some interesting possibilities short term that one could pull out of here and find ways to get some funding on a limited basis for some cooperation from local property owners, for example, to show progress and do some of these things that I think make a lot of sense. For example, a few bike racks around, not that expensive, probably possible to find somebody who would be willing to put them on their property around there somewhere, I don't know. An interesting thing, I don't actually technically know who owns the grassy area next to the pizza house that I sometimes walk through to get to the bank, but that would be a great place to have a few picnic tables. And you know, again, that may be impossible given who owns whatever property, but that kind of thing begins to provide a social gathering place there. Maybe something that, you know, kids could be attracted to. I don't know what that might be, but something.
Don't have a heart attack, Sam, but I agree with you 100% on that. And that's something that we have talked about and done some outreach to try and accomplish, and it's been a little challenging, but
not too expensive.
Right.
But I think that demonstrates progress. And by the way, this is the second time in the last 4 or 5 months that we've strongly agreed, so we got to watch it. Be very careful. Anyway, but again, I think that it's
a shift in the alignment of the planets or something.
the force, the disturbance in the force. But I think that you know, a handful of fairly small things. I mean, I think that's the way you start. Demonstrate visible progress, and I think some of those things might surprise us in terms of the ability to, you know, affect people's use and feeling about that kind of space. Because I think social spaces, gathering spaces, are extremely important. I've seen that work in a lot of different cities. I do a lot of traveling, and there's some classic examples of that. Were not very costly, but provide an opportunity to sort of draw people in ways that haven't been possible before. And then longer term, to be able to build some infrastructure, whether it's, you know, bakeries or whatever you want there, that also draws people, puts all those pieces together. So I would urge you to focus on some of that as you think about the bigger issues.
Thank you, Sam,
Sure.
and I agree, and you know, that's why we wanted to make sure to include not just, do you want more restaurants, do you want a mixed use, but you know, what beautification or more simple improvements that make it a more welcoming, community-oriented space, and that's why we wanted to include that, so we appreciate your support.
I see a number of people with strollers with kids, you know, walking through there as I drive through there occasionally. And I mean, some place for people sort of to stop and you know, socialize or whatever would be a wonderful thing, I think. So anyway.
Can you explain the difference between, there's two drawings here on pages 2 and 3. So one is the map is the business village district as it exists now. And then the next one has a circle around it and seems to, there you go, and seems to put a circle around, is this, I guess I'm confused. Is
Yeah,
it,
so it's the same map, Claire.
Right, right.
The second one is just, I think it was 1,000-foot radius around the business village district
okay.
from a zoning
Center,
perspective.
yeah.
Because the reason that I'm asking it is when we're defining the business village district, I think we need to make sure we understand what area we're talking about. A lot of what we talked about would be fine if we have more land in order to, you know, there is no town-owned land there. There are 2 parcels that are privately owned that could be sold. So when I look at this, then I say, well, is the plan then to go and see about purchasing some of the land that's within that circle?
We haven't, I don't
Right,
think,
yeah, we
yeah,
haven't
I-
talked about that.
yeah.
But,
And
but
I
if you
think
look
from a
at the
different perspective, because I didn't think of it till tonight. So, that's why it's not
just
in
let me finish
in the
on-
survey.
on this first map, this is the way I understand this, being on the committee also, is that what's on page 2 is the current business village district that we're talking about.
That can do retail business transactions.
Right.
But what I was thinking as I was listening to tonight's presentation is that the downtown and its multi-purposed, non-zoning related overlay probably starts more up by town hall and comes down and maybe even goes around the corner to Falcone's and the church
Mhm.
and
I think this shows that, yeah.
Yeah.
If-
and so
Yeah, because if you look at.
So the lack of public, what made me think of it, when people were saying the lack of public space, and I'm thinking, well, can't the community house lawn do that? And then I realized it's not in the village business district, and that's why we're hearing that. Or the front lawn of St. Mark's that they let us use. Again, nice big space there.
Yeah.
So
This-
it's just maybe we need to, as we think about not only the retail component, but the community spirit definition of downtown is slightly bigger.
Yeah, we wanted to outline, at least from a zoning perspective, what the business village district is. But I think in terms of the sort of next steps and what makes sense for the ULI TAP program, I don't know that it's necessary. I don't think we've defined it at that level of
Right.
detail. Where for ULI purposes, we want them only to focus on, that orange area. I think
Right.
there's.
'Cause I'd love to have the library included.
Yeah.
There's things I said.
And there's a lot of good
previous
reasons to do that,
Community
yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
Dave,
Hi, Fred.
that orange is part of what was considered and proposed under the zoning advisory committee study. The pink in that is actually what you have on page 2 in the current business village district. The orange is not current business village, but it was considered at one time.
Okay.
Ready?
As an
Well,
overlay.
that was sort of my
Expanded
question.
overlay.
Are these online or somewhere? Because even with my super magnifiers, I
I
can't
know.
read the key.
Yes, so Pam pulled these off of the Mass GIS site for us. So they're the zoning overlays from the GIS site. So yes, they are available, but also on the last page of the survey, second to last page is the, let-
That's, so
It
that's
was
the
the
link.
last page, is the
That's the-
downtown survey results, but we're gonna have this PowerPoint also posted there, so you can,
Can the key be redone so you can see what the colors are? Like what is the orange? Bill just described it, but is it something you're using for your planning or is it
No.
something left from before?
No, these
That's
are-
what strikes, jumps out of
Yeah.
that,
these are, I can tell you exactly what they are, let's see.
I'm sure we can probably put a link to it on the
Yeah.
website so that you can blow it up and, yeah. I know
But if
what
you're
you
doing
mean.
another PowerPoint, maybe just with the colors.
Yeah.
But I had a different question on
Yep.
all the open space issues, which,
They are existing zoning districts, so we're not redrawing the map or putting
so the
in,
orange is a separate zoning district.
correct.
Well, I'm sorry, but it is.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
Tenants,
The orange is I would say, it's current
it's
resident
just a,
speed.
it's 1,000 feet. And it's where, the orange
Oh.
shades, I was looking at the orange
Yes,
shades.
you're right about the orange.
That's all it is, just 1,000 feet.
Yep.
And where the 1,000 feet goes through a lot, that's why the shapes are very odd. But, that map, I think, is a mistake. I'm sort of being a bit stronger than other people here. It's misleading, you're gonna cause concerns. The only issue is 1,000 feet. That's all you're saying,
So-
really, isn't it?
So there's two maps. The first map is the zoning map, right?
Right.
In pink there is the business village district. The second map is in orange. And the red in the middle okay, including that blue lot. And that blue lot was just because that was the address that she put in when she pulled up the map. That's the only reason that one in the middle is blue. That's the red is the business village district, the orange are the properties within that sort of abutters list radius of the business village district. And I think she did it at 1,000 feet. The idea was not to, it's just to show you kind of generally the downtown area that we had been thinking about. It wasn't to make any proclamations about what the business village district should be or anything like that. We're not even close to that level of
That's
analysis.
just a labeling issue, but I wanted to talk about the open space, which is, I'm not surprised, but pleased with the response of what people are looking for. Something the Open Space Preservation Commission has been doing for years. All of our public forums and research for open space and recreation plans for decades has had the same response. So I think there's a way we've tapped into something there. And also for people that don't know, I'm sure you do know, Dave, the Marlborough EDC went around to all their businesses and asked, what do you want in your town, in Marlborough, for keeping your business here? And the number one response was walking trails and open space adjacent to the business community, which led to a joint regional project we participated in for a regional trail system that was headed by, I think, the Central Regional Planning Agency, but it was through the Marlborough EDC was the
It was Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Marlboro was in that one.
right, well, it was Veracolius was the lead for the beginning of it, which also led to our creating a trails committee here in town. And the point about downtown is there's many opportunities where in regional trails, not that long ago, MWRA said you will never walk on the aqueducts. And now they have an aqueduct trail plan where they want you to be able to walk from Clinton to Cleveland Circle. And they were adamant, you will never get access to the aqueducts. And why I bring that up is because we do have a train line through downtown. And we have been told it's 2 tracks, but there's only 1 in use. And there are places in this country where 2 tracks where there's one way more active, vibrant train line going on the 1 line than we have here in town. And the second track is actually a bike trail and walking trail. It's done, it can be done safely. So right now, I believe the train company, I forget, CSX owns it.
Yeah.
But where they're saying no, never, I'm just putting in, you keep that in the back burner, because certainly having that with a trail line, just like Hudson, I think part of their vitalization has to do with the rail trail going through there. And I'll just bring up this Thursday morning, there's a Metro West Regional Collaborative kickoff for the Metro West landline kickoff. And there's plans for some sort of bike trail connecting all the regional, Ashland, there's this Upper Charles Trail from Milford to Ashland. It's coming to through Hopkinton, and we're looking at, there's people looking at connecting Southborough too. So, plays into keeping downtown in mind, even if not now, in the future. And even if they say no, never, put it in your back burner, on your list to check in once in a while. And finally, I'm sure you would be doing this anyhow, but the Open Space Preservation Commission would love to work with you on the open space component of this, be a partner.
Thank you for your feedback. And this is kind of, if folks will indulge me in my soapbox for just a minute, this is a classic example of why I think economic development is so important in almost any community. Because, I think too many folks hear economic development and what they hear is the development piece of it. And they think, oh my God, they're just coming in here to open any business that they can possibly get their hands on, regardless of the impact that it has to the community. And I think what's so important in our work and in our mission is that that we're looking for economic development opportunities that complement the existing qualities that we have in Southborough and that build on what our residents want and what is productive for our residents. And what you find is that the more people you talk to, and this is kind of this, I'm on the Marlborough Economic Development Corporation board. We do hear from companies all the time that they want those amenities. And what's funny is that's the exact same thing that the residents want. So there's a real kind of unity of purpose that supports, your kind of thriving business community, but also gives the residents resources and amenities that are for their benefit and that they can use as well. I'm an avid bike trail guy, and you're absolutely right. The more that you can connect these kind of resources to one another, the more and more valuable that those resources become. Right now in Westboro, they're working on trying to get the bike trail. There's actually a bike trail that goes from the office park that my office is in, which is the Westboro Office Park. It's the southwest corner of 495 and Route 9. They're going to have a bike trail that connects from that office park that'll take you right to downtown Westboro, and it's going to go underneath 495. There's an existing tunnel that I don't think anybody has been through in God knows how many decades, but part of the project is to connect that in, and it's going to come out on the other side into Southborough. And so that's just kind of one piece of it, but you get a bike trail that gets underneath 495. If you can figure that out, it just opens up a whole range of possibilities. And exactly to your point, Freddie, that these, and that's another thing that, on my soapbox, that I love about economic development work is that it gives us these opportunities to kind of to build on these resources and to help the business community, and also at the same time, get the kinds of resources and amenities that you folks on your committee are interested in, and so many of the residents are interested in too.
Just to follow up on that, we have been working with, I'd be surprised if you knew the name Don Burns, who I believe probably found that tunnel under 495. I could be wrong, but he's been doing this bike trail push for many, many years, and including us. And I did want to restate the fact that it is because of the work of the Marlborough EDC bringing this group together, which ended up with this, you want to see the fall through, is Southborough's Trails Committee that worked really hard to get our, I believe I might be speaking out of turn, but I believe all the legal licenses are now signed to use the reservoir trail, which we were in a minute away from losing access to that trail because we didn't have the contract signed, and that Trails Committee worked tirelessly on that with DCR and MWRA. And it's an outfall of working together. EDC and Marlborough brought it out, brought in funding. So collaboration is a marvelous thing. So.
Yeah, and Freddie, I think it'd be really important, based on the feedback that we got in the survey, I think it'd be really important to have you or a delegate from the trail committee involved with whatever we do going forward, because that seemed to be something that was universally, something that people were interested in. Even when we broke down the different types of things, I think we talked about farmers markets and bike racks and trails and a couple of other things, and that was trails, walkability, connectivity was the top. They were all universally positive, but that was the most positive response that we got.
They always are.
Yeah.
Freddie, there's a mailing list circulating around, so if you'd like to get on the list, we'll make sure that you're
Put my name, I
kind of
thought
tied in.
everyone already had one.
So, yes, please.
Just a question, in looking at how some of the questions, most of the questions were answered, it seemed most of them by the majority of people answered them, but on the bottom of page 5, top of page 6, which is question 17 and question 18, the number of people that skipped those, I think those are very important questions, so it's kind of a 2-question thing. What is your take from the feedback that you may have gotten as to why these 2 questions were skewed so different than the others, and how, question 2, how will you take the findings of these, because they are both important questions. How will you take them and weight them going forward with any plans or suggestions you may have?
I think that's a really good question, and I think there was some confusion in the survey where some of the questions were geared toward people who owned or operated or worked in businesses downtown. But looking at them after the fact, and obviously more than just business operators were responding to them, I'm actually glad we had, obviously it's a little bit smaller of a sample pool than the rest.
Yep.
But I'm actually glad we have the feedback, because I think it is they are good questions for residents to answer from a use perspective of, what are the advantages of why do you like to do business downtown? And doing business could mean running a business, but it also could mean doing your banking or using the services and amenities down there. So I think there was some confusion, but I don't think that it necessarily skews the results.
Yeah, that last part of the survey, a couple of questions before that, it was, do you have an existing business in the
Okay.
downtown? Do you own property in the downtown? And then the questions that kind of flowed from that were, more, I think, in our minds geared towards the business and the property owners downtown, business and or residents of the downtown area. But clearly, I think we got more responses and more feedback than that, which, as it turned out, was kind of a happy surprise. I think that
So the value of those questions still has the same value that all the other questions had, irregardless of the number of people that
I think
responded.
so.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
And it's not, I think we treat it differently if it was a really small sample size, but there's still significant enough
Okay.
sample size where I think
Thank you.
it's very
And,
useful.
and I think this was one of the first questions that we had in the survey was, are you a resident, or, do you own a business in town? And I think we had 27 respondents that owned a business in
Right.
Southborough.
Yep.
So the sample size of the survey was, heavily
Right.
weighted towards residents rather than businesses, but the feedback from both is
Right, and I think it was very important. Both questions are very important, so it's good to know that they're given the value that they should get. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions?
On the ULI, are there examples of other towns who have used them and actually moved forward, and some examples of how it's worked out?
Yeah, there are a ton of examples on ULI's website. I'll admit I don't have them kind of committed to memory, but I know they've worked with a number of cities and towns in
I want
Massachusetts.
to say Hamilton was one we looked
Yeah.
at. That was, a similar
to us.
town to Southborough
Yeah.
where they did some interesting things. And yes, you can definitely get some information on their website. Their director, we've had her in here a couple of times for public meetings. We've had her come to our economic development committee meetings a couple of times. She was at our broker breakfast a couple of times as well. So, and we were considering inviting her tonight, but decided we would kind of get the residents together first, but I'm sure at one of the subsequent meetings, at least we'll bring her in to talk more about the kind of work that they do. But they've worked in big cities and small towns, but they've done work in towns similar to Southborough, and there are definitely lots of examples available.
Yeah, and it's interesting the range of kind of the study design that they do. I mean, Julie's absolutely right. That you have a whole range of communities, and then you have different communities asking for different things. So you might be in a city, and I'm just making up an example. I don't think they did. They did do a Marlboro study, I believe. But you could see something as narrow as the Walker Building in downtown Marlboro, which is a much larger community, where they'll come to a town like Southborough and they could do something focused on a single building, or they could do something as large as the business village, generally, or even, larger. And this is something that we had talked about a bit. Do we want to kind of focus on the villages more generally, or do we want to focus on downtown? And I think there was some healthy debate about it, but we kind of zeroed in on the downtown more specifically, not as any slight to the other villages, but really to kind of keep a narrow focus, try and get something done and capitalize on the Main Street project at the same time.
Was there a difference between the feedback in this survey and the surveys that were done for the master plan? What people were looking for then?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I have not looked at, and I don't know, I haven't seen it available, so we probably have to do some digging to find it to see what the master plan survey results are. I've read the master plan and, get a sense of the overall feedback of it, but I haven't seen
It'd
sort of the
actually
raw
be really
data of the
interesting
master
to see,
plan.
though. That's a good question.
Well, I don't want to really flip this back at you, Mimi, but do you think the planning board could give us that? Because planning board was the oversight committee for doing the original, well, not the original master plan, but the most recent one. They also were the original, but the most recent one where those surveys were used. So I think if I were to start an archive look, I would start with Marina and see if she's got them.
Okay.
Because I know she's been reading them relative to future master plan.
There was a lot of community meetings and feedback through first the master plan committee, zoning advisory committee, and there was a survey 4 or 5 years ago that was done through Clark University on overall town feelings on different things that might have some of that. That might still be available on the internet. But those were 3 things that I would say, within the last, maybe we'll go back 7 years, it might be more, but those 3 projects were done. I served on master plan, I served
Okay.
on zoning advisory, and we were involved, as selectmen, we were involved with that Clark study that gave a lot of information.
Was that kind of done directly through the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, through the Board of Selectmen. Clark University, through their master's degree in public administration, performed a survey that went out to basically every residence in town to ask different things like, transfer station and this and other stuff. So there was a lot of information there, and you may find different results from master plan to zoning advisory committee to that survey as well. But the information is there.
Okay, we'll hunt that down.
Yeah.
I have a couple of comments about it. First
Go
of
ahead.
all, I do think that there's just a tremendous opportunity to differentiate how Main Street is designed throughout, from the Sears Road all the way down to Park Street, and it ends at Park Street. Ironically, doesn't it? It's odd. Because, from Park Street East, it's too narrow, so the state wouldn't fund it. But, it brings up the issue, from Park Street East, I've always thought it should be completely different. It is, you've, ironically, I don't really particularly agree with what you've done, but you've highlighted the zoning district. So why don't we have different types of sidewalks? Why don't we have brick sidewalks, for instance? Differentiate. When you come into downtown, you see it. It's visual. Visual. I just urge that I don't think any thought has been put to this whatsoever. Somehow it sort of ends at Park Street. All this work is going to start in March, and it's just a tremendous opportunity to make it look different. When you come to Park Street, why can't the sidewalks be, for instance, brick? I'm not advocating necessarily brick, but different. And also this connection between, it's odd your map here on page 2, just to the north there's that land zoned industrial. It might as well be zoned pink. I mean, it's a complete accident it's zoned industrial because there was the Deerfoot Farms. But there's more business in that pink to the north than there is in the entire downtown business district, isn't there? I mean, the Southborough Medical is huge. What's it, 150,000 square feet? It's probably more square footage in Southborough Medical than there is in everything else. But there's no connection whatsoever. There's no sidewalk. It's just really, really odd. And it seems to me that as a priority should be sort of connecting those two. And let's face it, Tony Kwan owns a ton of land. He owns all the land opposite. There's a gigantic potential there, to sort of create something really innovative opposite the medical place. I mean, senior
To
care.
answer what your very first point about designing and differentiating the central business district, and your suggestion was particularly with sidewalks. That is coming up very soon as a hot topic item, because we'll be designing, the town, we will be designing phase 2 of the Route 30 Main Street project. And it's at that time that Karen will be dealing with visually connecting Route 30 and at the same time differentiating the central business district and asking people to be involved in that. So if the crosswalks are going to be different in the central business district than they are, say, at the 8530 juncture, or the sidewalk's going to be different. I would hope the lighting wasn't different, because I think that might be too much of a differentiation in a very small physical space. But all that stuff is going to is up for discussion in phase 2. And we're going to participate with phase 2, but it's definitely under the jurisdiction of the DPW.
Well, when does that happen?
It's a good question. I don't know exactly what her timeline is.
They don't have one. So.
They don't have one yet.
You know, one of the things, this is kind of an answer to David's question, and some of what we were talking about. The Main Street project is going to have sidewalks and a bike lane. So a lot of that, the walkability, is going to be taken care of getting there. And feel free to jump in on anything I'm forgetting.
It was described as your project.
Doing a great job.
Okay. So as far as what distinguishes the sidewalks, once I learned what an asphalt berm was, and it wasn't exactly the nicest way to end a sidewalk, and that it's going to have granite corners, edges, okay, what do you call, whatever you call it.
She's a design expert.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, help me out here. So anyway, so that's one part of it. And then when we were going through what kind of benches do you want to have and what kind of bike holders you want to have, and flipping through the catalog, for lack of a better term, there's a lot of different choices. But we did make all of those choices along with the lights, and there's a balance between what is actually going to be paid for by the project and how much additional money the town wants to throw into it. Now, the continuation through the actual downtown business village is going to be in line with exactly what has been followed along, which makes all the sense in the world. I did check with Karen. They don't have a time frame for that, and she didn't really even know when they were going to have a time frame for it. So, and the continuation would go on, considering that there is limited space down there. There's already one store that is sitting on the sidewalk. So you can't move that stuff. So the downtown part will have to take in some of those considerations that are there.
But I just want to point out, that's not unusual. I mean, because in historic areas, it is not unusual. In fact, when we were doing the design for the MBTA garage, the train station in Southborough, and we're working on the roads and sidewalks necessary as mitigation for the station, there were stoops of homes in the right-of-way, and we just literally worked around it.
Yes.
And nobody noticed that we changed the road layout a little.
Any other comments, questions, feedback? All right. Yes, ma'am.
Maria Bagnini, 32 Ladesquama Road. I think the takeaway is that 90% of people want more restaurants or pubs and things like that. Where's the opportunity there? I don't see a lot of available restaurant and retail space, where do we get those things if the space is not available?
Great question. So one of the things that we try to do, and I'm repeating myself because I think you came in.
I came in late,
yeah.
I apologize.
No problem at all. No, it's good feedback, and so this survey was designed to be kind of minimalist in the sense of what is it that you want rather than what is it that you think is possible. I think implementing these things is going to have a variety of different challenges, and space and available lots and things like that is just one of them. So I think those are it's going to be a combination of reuse to get some of these things, and there are probably a couple of properties that are possibilities, bless you, to deliver on some of those things. So the short answer is I don't have a real answer for you just yet because we're just kind of getting started, and that the intent was not to come up with all those answers as part of the survey itself, but rather at least to kind of pressure test is the stuff that people said they wanted in the master plan process, does that still hold true? Because that was 9 or 10 years ago, and it seems to.
Yeah, and I think our plan here is to kind of come up with a goal to fine-tune some of these results, and we're going to have follow-up meetings to do that, and then figure out a way to work toward that goal. And obviously that's the limited availability of space and land and septic and zoning. All those are going to be different obstacles, but other towns have taken care of those. Other towns have tackled those, and we're past that to come up with a revitalization of a downtown area. So it's possible. There are ways to do that. Property can transfer hands. There are ways to work on that. So it's first coming up with a goal, then figuring out a plan how to get there, and that's why we're going to be holding more of these meetings and working with outside groups that are experts at figuring these things out to get to those goals.
And I think we should make it clear that we're still open to thinking of the central business district from boundaries different than the zoning, current today's zoning. Like we could go around the corner on Boston Road and get down to that lovely brick building that's empty and would make a great bakery or a great pub, or there are places like that. And the point that David made about the 150,000 square feet existing having no connectivity to the central business district needs to be looked at too. And it's because it's bringing a market potential
Absolutely.
to the central business district, and vice versa.
Yeah, it is kind of surprising, I guess is the word that I choose, that there's not,
Better
some
connectivity?
connectivity
Some of it's
already.
by design, I found out.
Probably, yeah, and probably a combination of factors.
All right. Ready?
Ready?
Beyond this map, and I know this is a premature question, but are you looking at expanding downtown beyond the map so that if you don't have land in the downtown area necessarily suitable for the pubs and restaurants, if there was land a little bit further on and then you could connect downtown to that, or is that endangering having downtown sort of fall off having a new downtown, if you, all those things have to be
Good
considered.
questions and concerns. You're right, we have to kind of figure out what the possibilities are, but then weigh that against, is that defeating our purpose of trying to have this centralized downtown community feel? So those are really great questions to think about.
If you look at the, bird's eye view, there's land outside of there that could be connected and fulfill some of the goals, but it's not, again, part of your downtown.
Right.
What areas are you thinking about?
I don't think I should say.
Okay.
Take a GIS map and zoom out and see where there's land not developed, and you can figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, just to build on Julie's answer and your kind of suggestion that it was premature, I don't think certainly our committee hasn't had that kind of discussion of, we really think we should expand the business village district or, tap into some new property that would give us a bit of a a blank canvas or anything. We just haven't had that kind of discussion yet.
Well, just back to the septic situation, we know there's a wastewater treatment plant not far away. I don't think we can, the privately owned, we can't tap into it, but something's, exactly, right. So I'm bringing that up, which pushes you in that direction a little bit, and then look at the land that's going to be developed there.
And obviously, septic is one of those elephants in the room that we're gonna have to deal with at some point, if we wanna do anything over and above the most minuscule things that we talked about. But that's, again, something that ULI has helped communities with to figure out. So whether it's, a self-contained private septic kind of situation or working with tapping into other septic resources, there are things we're gonna have to deal with, but they're not necessarily prohibitive, so.
I just want to throw out, can I just throw out, be a bit provocative?
I was afraid you might do that,
I
David.
don't want to I know some people are going to get upset about what I'm going to say, but, if you're going to hire ULI, there's a huge, they're architects, aren't they? They're architects more than they are planners. They're very visual. And I just want to throw out an idea here that I haven't really ever, well, I'm going to throw it out. Even though I think some people may get upset. The real centre of town is the intersection of Main and 85. I mean, that I think, if anyone, where's the centre of town, they would say that's it, Main and 85. Now look at Main and 85. It's very interesting because you've got three beautiful sides. You've got the postal, you've got the library, you've got St Mark's front lawn, and you've got the community house, and you have a fourth side, which is an affordable house. It's completely coincidental. It's sort of haphazard. It just sort of happened, and we bought the affordable house, and so it's occupied by. Oh, we bought the house, and it's occupied by someone we're using it as an affordable unit. But from a design point of view, that's completely crazy. That fourth corner should be a symbolic that is the fourth corner of four corners. It should not be, visually, design-wise, urban design in any design studio, that would never be an affordable house. It would be a symbolic corner with a statue of Burnett or Fay on it. And the house would be moved somewhere else. Or the town would buy a two-family house somewhere else and put that person somewhere else, because I don't want to sort of upset, I'm not against affordable housing. I'm saying aesthetically, that corner should be designed so it's as symbolic, it's as symbolic as the library. It should be a statue of Burnett, a statue of Fay, a curved rock wall, seats, beautifully landscaped, and then your intersection would look beautiful. Do you understand what I'm getting at? I'm saying, the visual potential to design that corner so it really becomes a really significantly beautiful corner, four-way intersection, is just something I want to throw out. It's sort of struck me again and again and again. It's it's there, but no one ever talks about it because it's just an accident of history, and it's just a pity. God, if I know several wealthy people who could probably afford to buy another house somewhere else, move the person somewhere else. They could buy that and put a statue of Burnett up. There is no statue to Burnett and Fay, is there, in Southborough? It's extraordinary. The founders of Southborough there's a house called the Burnett House. There's no statue. Anyway, I just throw that out. And the other thing, similar to that, in Ashton, they have this extraordinarily beautiful space. It's owned by the town, isn't it? And what's it called? Where the town owns it, and they put a little coffee thing there, and all these people threw money at it.
The corner spot?
The corner spot. It's amazing. Okay, it's sort of, it's not particularly visually attractive, but it's symbolically incredibly important, isn't it? It's really a genuine meeting space, and we don't have that. So I'm sort of I have a two-pronged suggestion. One thing is we should focus on beauty and beautifying corners, to make them visually beautiful and symbolic with statues and so forth and seating. And the other thing, we need that spot. We need that, activity spot, that sort of center. Oh, well, I'm going to meet you at the spot, wherever that is. I mean, I can suggest several places where it could be, but there are two different things we're missing, and it could so easily be done. Anyway, I just throw it out.
And I think, David, I think the sort of general takeaway from that, and this is something that we talked about when we started working with ULI and thinking about doing this program, and ultimately what led to the survey itself, is the range of possibilities that the community was interested in supporting and pursuing for the downtown. And was it just the kind of, I don't mean to diminish it in any way, but was it, did people want the kind of just limited beautification project so that what we had looked nice? Was that kind of the limit of the appetite, where people didn't want anything more? They just wanted to make it look nicer. It was, I sort of think of it as, kind of a coat of paint and make things look pretty. Or did they want something more from that? And I think there's a range of possibilities in that, do they want something more from that, where you can go, I don't think there's an appetite for big box stores or chain restaurants or anything like that. I think the answer is, in the middle, that people want the kind of beautification projects. I don't know specifically the ones that you're talking about, but certainly they want that kind of work. But they also want some enhanced amenities, and that's, things from coffee shops and restaurants and small scale retail to what Freddie was talking about, which is connectivity to open space and you're not going to have a vast, Chestnut Hill type expanse of open space, but public gathering areas where people can do the kinds of things that you're talking about that create a sense of space and create kind of a physical community that you see in some other towns. Again, I don't get the sense that it's large scale, but it's certainly, that kind of sense of community and that sense of place, really kind of shines through in the survey. Anyone else?
Thanks for your hard work.
Going once, going twice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
I'll join you, Chris.
A lot of hard work, it is. I don't know how you do it.
So that's the downtown survey part of the program. We also had on the agenda any other business or public comment. I think we have kind of covered that. But if anybody has anything to add, going once, going twice. Me, nope, two.
Was the Southborough Economic Development Committee involved in the RFP for Amazon?
We were. Yes, that's not technically on the agenda, so I probably
You
shouldn't
said
comment
public
on it.
comment.
Yeah. So I'd be happy to follow up with you offline, and our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, November 3rd, and that will certainly be on the agenda. So happy to give you all the information you want about that offline or at that meeting. I just didn't put it on this agenda, so in
There
fairness,
was
I
an
should.
article in the paper about it.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. I have a motion to adjourn. Motion made and seconded. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thanks very much, folks.